We did not start our lives dreaming of happiness. We started by learning how to survive. In our youth, laughter felt like a luxury meant for other people, the kind who had time, money, or someone waiting for them at home. For us, youth was noisy with responsibilities and quiet with understanding. We woke up every morning with tired bones and heavier expectations, telling ourselves that this was what adulthood looked like. Crying was private, hidden behind bathroom doors, under pillows, or inside crowded buses where no one looked closely enough to notice. I remember believing that strength meant endurance. If you could endure without complaining, without breaking down in public, you were considered successful. Love was supposed to come naturally along the way, like a reward. But for many of us, love was delayed, misplaced, or misunderstood. We married for stability, for approval, or sometimes not at all. We built families, careers, and reputations, yet somewhere between earning a living and paying bills, we misplaced joy. In my 20s, I thought tears were temporary. I believed that once I reached a certain milestone, everything would fall into place. A better job, a bigger house, a settled life. What no one tells you is that life does not slow down when you reach those milestones. It speeds up. Days blur together. Years disappear quietly. You stop asking yourself how you feel and start asking only what needs to be done next. Youth demanded sacrifices, and we gave them freely. We sacrificed time, health, friendships, and sometimes our own voices. I stayed silent in arguments to keep peace. I accepted disappointments because resistance felt exhausting. Every compromise seemed reasonable at the time. Only later did I realize that too many compromises can erase a person slowly, without them noticing. I watched people around me laugh loudly, post smiling pictures, celebrate milestones. I smiled too, but it felt rehearsed. Inside, there was a constant heaviness, like unfinished conversations with myself. Nights were the hardest. When the world went quiet, thoughts grew louder. Regrets visited without invitation. Questions like, what if? And, why not? Echoed until sleep finally claimed me. Marriage, when it came, was not a fairy tale. It was practical, structured, and emotionally distant. We shared responsibilities more than feelings. We talked about groceries, children, schedules, and finances, but rarely about fears or dreams. Over time, even conversations became efficient, stripped of warmth. Love did not disappear suddenly, it faded gradually, like an old photograph losing color. I learned to cry silently. Tears became something I wiped away quickly before anyone noticed. Society did not allow men like me to admit loneliness, and women like her were expected to endure quietly. We both played our roles well. Outsiders called us stable, settled, and respectable. Inside, we were exhausted actors repeating the same scenes. Work consumed most of my waking hours. I told myself I was doing it for the family, for security, for the future. But work also became an escape. It was easier to stay late at the office than return home to emotional emptiness. Success came with promotions and praise, yet none of it filled the hollow space that kept growing. There were moments when laughter almost returned. Small moments. A shared joke at work, a stranger's kindness, a song on the radio that reminded me of who I once was. But those moments passed quickly. Responsibility always pulled me back. Joy felt irresponsible, like something that might distract me from duty. As years passed, my body began to change. Energy faded. Recovery took longer. I noticed wrinkles forming, gray hair appearing, and a quiet fear settled in my chest. Had this been it? Was this what life amounted to? A long stretch of effort followed by fatigue. I had spent my youth crying internally, telling myself laughter would come later. Now later was here, and laughter still felt unfamiliar. Loss arrived without warning. People I loved left this world, one by one. Parents aged and passed. Friends drifted away or became strangers. Death had a way of rearranging priorities brutally. It stripped life down to its essentials. Yet even grief had to be managed efficiently. There were rituals, condolences, and expectations to fulfill. After the loss of my partner, silence became a permanent resident in my home. The quiet was different from before. It was heavier, deeper. At first, it felt unbearable. Then it became routine. I learned how to live with absence, how to make tea for one, how to eat meals without conversation. Loneliness aged me faster than time ever could. People assumed that after a certain age, the heart stops wanting. That desire, companionship, and romance belong to the young. I believed that too. I told myself my chapter was closed. I dressed plainly, spoke cautiously, and lowered my expectations. I did not want to appear foolish, hopeful, or vulnerable anymore. But life has a strange sense of timing. Just when you accept emptiness is permanent, it introduces change quietly. No dramatic entrance, no warning, just a subtle shift. For me, it came in the form of shared silence with someone who understood it. We met without anticipation. No butterflies, no dramatic spark. Just two people sitting in the same space, comfortable enough not to fill every pause. Conversation flowed slowly, carefully. We talked about ordinary things at first. Weather, routines, aches, and memories. There was relief in not having to impress. She laughed gently, not loudly. It surprised me how unfamiliar that sound felt in my life. Her laughter did not demand attention, it invited peace. I realized then how long it had been since I associated laughter with comfort rather than performance. We shared our histories gradually, like fragile objects handled with care. No one rushed to explain or justify the past. There was mutual understanding that youth had been unkind to both of us. Tears had been frequent companions back then, even if no one else had seen them. In her presence, I felt permission to be slower, to speak honestly, to admit regrets without shame. Aging no longer felt like failure. It felt like survival. We had made it through storms others never saw. That alone deserved respect. Our laughter was hesitant at first, almost shy. It appeared in small doses, usually followed by silence, as if we were both surprised it had happened. But it grew stronger over time. Not louder, just steadier. It settled into our days naturally. For the first time, I understood that happiness does not always arrive with excitement. Sometimes it comes quietly, disguised as calm. After a lifetime of crying internally, learning to laugh felt like learning a new language. One spoken slowly, with patience and forgiveness. We did not try to reclaim youth. We did not chase lost time. Instead, we honored it by allowing ourselves what we had once denied. Gentleness, presence, shared mornings without urgency, evenings without fear of judgment. Looking back, I see now that youth taught us endurance, but age taught us honesty. We cried when we were young because we did not know how to ask for what we needed. We learned to laugh later because we finally gave ourselves permission to live differently. This was not a second chance at youth. It was something better. A first chance at peace. Loneliness changes shape as you age. When you are young, it feels sharp and restless, like something you must escape immediately. In later years, it becomes quieter, heavier, more settled, like a piece of furniture you never wanted but learned to live around. By the time she entered my life, I had already made peace with solitude, or at least I thought I had. I believed I no longer needed anyone. That belief was my armor, polished by years of disappointment. Our days began to overlap naturally. There was no announcement, no decision made out loud. One day she was simply there more often than not. A shared walk, an exchanged message, a cup of tea that stretched longer than planned. Time behaved differently around her. It slowed down, softened at the edges. I noticed how conversations did not exhaust me the way they used to. Silence between us felt complete, not awkward. We carried our pasts carefully. At this age, history is heavy, and careless words can reopen wounds you spent decades closing. She spoke about her marriage without bitterness, only quiet sadness. I listened without interrupting, knowing that sometimes being heard matters more than being understood. When it was my turn, I spoke about my failures honestly. I did not decorate them with excuses. She did not judge. That alone felt revolutionary. There was a strange relief in realizing we did not need to fix each other. In youth, love often arrives with ambition, with plans to change, improve, or reshape someone into a better version. At our age, love came without instructions. We accepted each other as finished drafts, complete with typos, crossed out dreams, and faded ink. Physical closeness developed slowly, not out of fear, but respect. Hands brushed accidentally before they held intentionally. Sitting close felt intimate enough. We learned each other's rhythms, the way age had taught our bodies caution. Desire existed, but it was gentler, less demanding. It asked for presence, not performance. What surprised me most was how laughter began to visit us more frequently. It emerged during ordinary moments. A forgotten word, a shared memory remembered differently, a stubborn lid that refused to open. We laughed at ourselves, at life, at the absurdity of having waited so long to feel this lightness. Each laugh carried disbelief, as if we were both thinking the same thing. Why did we think it was over? The world around us remained unchanged. People still hurried, argued, chased success. But within our small shared space, urgency lost its power. We planned less and felt more. There were no grand promises about forever. We focused on today, sometimes tomorrow, rarely beyond that. At our age, the present is precious enough. Friends reacted differently. Some smiled kindly, genuinely happy for us. Others raised eyebrows, offering polite approval mixed with quiet skepticism. Society has rules about love, many of them unspoken. There is an age where affection becomes inconvenient, where romance is expected to retire gracefully. We ignored those expectations, not rebelliously, but peacefully. I noticed changes within myself. I slept better. My shoulders felt lighter. Old anxieties loosened their grip. I began to take better care of myself, not out of fear, but gratitude. Life no longer felt like something to endure. It felt like something to participate in again. She had her own transformation. Her voice grew steadier. Her smiles arrived faster. She spoke of the future with curiosity instead of resignation. We did not erase each other's loneliness, but we softened it. We made space for it to rest. There were difficult days too. Aging does not pause for love. Pain still visited. Doctor's appointments reminded us of fragility. Some mornings carried unexpected sadness. Memories returned uninvited. On those days, we did not rush to cheer each other up. We sat together, letting the heaviness exist. That, too, was love. I learned that companionship in later life is less about excitement and more about safety. Knowing someone will not disappear when you are quiet. Knowing your honesty will not scare them away. Knowing you are not too late, too old, or too much. We spoke often about our younger selves. About what we wished we had known. About how many tears could have been saved with one honest conversation. There was grief in those reflections, but also forgiveness. We stopped blaming ourselves for surviving the only way we knew how. Our laughter now carried wisdom. It was not careless. It acknowledged pain without being consumed by it. It was the laughter of people who had cried enough to understand its value. I realized then that growing older does not mean life shrinks. It simply changes its language. The loud emotions fade, making room for quieter truths. Love stops shouting and starts whispering. And if you listen closely, those whispers can be more powerful than any scream of youth. We had not failed at love earlier. We had been practicing endurance. Now, finally, we were practicing joy. This phase of life did not promise eternity, but it offered authenticity. And after a lifetime of pretending to be strong, authenticity felt like the greatest gift. We learned to laugh not because life became easy, but because we stopped fighting its imperfections. Youth cried because it wanted control. Age laughed because it learned acceptance. And somewhere between shared silences and gentle smiles, we understood that this was not a late beginning. It was a right time arrival. Time becomes honest in later years. It no longer pretends to be endless, and because of that, every moment carries weight. With her, I began to notice details I once ignored. The sound of her breathing when she read quietly. The careful way she held her cup, mindful of aching fingers. These small observations became anchors, reminders that presence was the truest form of affection we had left. We did not rush our days. Mornings started slowly, with shared tea and unspoken gratitude. There was comfort in routine, but not boredom. Each repeated action felt intentional, as if we were saying yes to life again and again. In youth, routine felt like a trap. Now it felt like shelter. Our conversations deepened without effort. We spoke about faith, fear, and the strange relief that comes with letting go of ambition. We laughed at how seriously we once took things that no longer mattered. success, image, approval. Aging stripped those illusions away gently, replacing them with clarity. Sometimes, memories arrived unexpectedly. A song from the past. A familiar scent. On those days, sorrow hovered near. We did not push it away. We acknowledged it, understanding that grief and love often share the same space. Holding her hand during those moments felt like an agreement to honor what was lost without being trapped by it. Physical closeness changed meaning. It was no longer about desire proving itself. It was about reassurance. A hand on the shoulder. A forehead touch. Sitting close enough to feel warmth. Our bodies had endured years of strain, and we treated them kindly now, without expectations. There were days when fear crept in quietly. Fear of loss. Fear of illness. Fear of being alone again. We spoke about these fears openly, without embarrassment. Silence, once our enemy, had become our ally. It gave space for honesty. The world often forgot people like us. Advertisements, stories, and dreams were aimed at the young. Yet within our small circle, we felt seen. We created our own narrative, one where love did not expire and tenderness was not embarrassing. I noticed how my perspective shifted. I stopped measuring life by achievements and started measuring it by moments of connection. A shared smile across the room. A joke that needed no explanation. These moments felt richer than any applause I had once chased. She taught me patience without trying to. Watching her move through pain with dignity reminded me that strength could be gentle. I admired her resilience, not because it was loud, but because it was consistent. Loving her felt like standing beside a quiet river, steady and deep. There were misunderstandings, of course. Two lives carry habits that clash. But conflict no longer felt threatening. We spoke calmly, listened fully, and allowed space for difference. Winning arguments lost its importance. Preserving peace mattered more. As seasons changed, so did we. Walks grew shorter. Rest became necessary. Yet joy adapted. It found us indoors, near windows, in shared glances. Happiness did not disappear when movement slowed. It simply shifted form. I began to reflect on my younger years with less bitterness. I forgave myself for not knowing what I know now. Survival had required blindness at times. Now, with safety and understanding, I could finally see clearly. She once said something that stayed with me. She said that love does not always come when you are ready, but when you are capable. That sentence rewrote my understanding of timing. Perhaps youth had been about becoming capable of love, not receiving it. We spoke about endings too. Not dramatically, not with despair. Just honestly. We acknowledged that nothing is guaranteed. Strangely, that knowledge made us more attentive, more present. Knowing moments were limited made them sacred. Our laughter in this phase was softer, often mixed with sighs. It carried history. It knew pain but chose warmth. It was not loud enough to announce itself, but strong enough to stay. Through her, I learned that companionship in later life is an act of courage. It requires reopening parts of the heart you thought were sealed forever. It demands vulnerability without the promise of time. And yet, despite that risk, it felt worth it. Every shared day felt earned, not owed. We were no longer chasing happiness. We were recognizing it. Youth had taught us how to endure storms. Age taught us how to appreciate clear skies. Together, we learned that laughter does not erase sorrow. It simply makes room for breathing. This stage of love was not a miracle. It was a choice, made daily, to show up gently. And in that choice, we found a peace that youth had never offered. The mornings became our sanctuary. Sunlight spilled across the floor in gentle streams, and we learned to greet it together, not as a rush to begin the day, but as a quiet celebration of still being here. Time had taught us patience, and now patience became a gift we gave each other freely. We did not speak of the years we had lost to worry or indifference. Instead, we focused on the hours that remained, stretching them carefully, savoring every pause. Evenings were our favorite. We would sit near the window, watching shadows lengthen and merge with the dimming light. Silence was no longer uncomfortable. It was a companion. Sometimes she hummed a melody from her youth. Other times, I shared a story I had never told anyone. There was an intimacy in these quiet exchanges that youth could never have prepared us for. It was a love built not on passion or novelty, but on understanding and shared existence. We laughed more now than I ever thought possible. Our laughter was quiet, reserved for moments when the absurdity of life became undeniable. A stubborn jar laid, a misread text, a memory of a past mistake, these small triggers became reasons to smile. Each laugh reminded us that joy had been patient, waiting silently for the right moment to enter our lives. There was no hurry. There was no expectation. Only presence. Occasionally, sorrow found us again. Aging is merciless in its reminders, aches, losses, and the inevitability of time passing. On these days, we did not speak much. We held hands or simply sat close, letting the weight of life settle without attempting to lighten it artificially. Our shared presence became its own kind of comfort, a silent acknowledgement that we did not have to face life's end alone. Travel, once a necessity for work or duty, became an exploration of memory and curiosity. Small journeys, walking to a favorite cafe, visiting a park where autumn leaves fell, felt like adventures. Every new observation was a discovery, every familiar scene a reminder of how much we had overlooked when younger. It was as if the world itself had slowed down to accommodate our pace, letting us savor the textures and sounds we had ignored in haste. We began to notice the little things, the way her eyes caught light, the gentle lift of a smile when she recalled a fond memory, the warmth of her hand when she reached for mine. Every small detail became a piece of a larger puzzle, the portrait of a life shared. Our connection was no longer about grand gestures. It was about consistency, presence, and the quiet acknowledgement of each other's being. People outside our small bubble often remarked on the change in us. Friends commented that we seemed lighter, more at peace. Neighbors noticed the shared glances, the easy smiles. We smiled politely, knowing that the truth was deeper than appearances. This love, unfolding in the later chapters of life, was subtle yet transformative. It did not announce itself dramatically, yet it reshaped the way we experienced every day. We began writing our own rituals, small acts that marked our time together. Morning tea became sacred. Evenings by the window were untouchable. Occasional letters left on the kitchen table, notes of appreciation or a recollection of a shared joke, became treasures. Through these practices, we created a rhythm that belonged solely to us, independent of society's rules or expectations. Physical closeness remained gentle. We moved with awareness, respecting decades of aches and limitations. Touch was deliberate, reassuring, and tender. We understood each other's limits, and yet every touch carried warmth and intention. In these gestures, words were unnecessary. We had learned that presence often speaks louder than conversation. And as time continued its quiet march, we found contentment in imperfection. Life was not perfect, we were not perfect. Illness, memory lapses, and moments of irritation occurred. Yet the love we cultivated did not rely on perfection. It relied on attention, empathy, and the willingness to show up daily, fully, even when it was difficult. We reflected often on our younger selves. There was compassion for those who struggled, anger for what we endured unnecessarily, and forgiveness for choices that had seemed right at the time. We saw that every hardship, every tear, had prepared us for this moment of gentle clarity. We had survived, and survival had taught us how to finally breathe freely. Ultimately, we learned that love does not expire with age. It simply transforms. Youth experiences love as intensity and fire, craving constant reassurance. Later love comes as a slow-burning flame, steady and resilient. It is not loud, but it is enduring. It does not erase sorrow, but it accommodates it, holding space for both pain and joy simultaneously. We laughed because we had known suffering. We cherished silence because we had known emptiness. We spoke tenderly because we had learned how precious words are when not wasted on pretense. And in each other's presence, we found a profound understanding. Life's beauty often arrives late, but when it does, it lingers, gentle and unwavering. By the end of each day, as darkness settled, we would sit together, hands intertwined, hearts quietly synchronized. There were no grand declarations, no theatrical moments. Just the knowledge that after decades of endurance, of silent tears and lonely nights, we had discovered what it meant to truly live. Laughter, peace, and love, all arriving in the quiet certainty of later life. And in that quiet, we smiled, because for the first time, we understood that happiness had been patient all along. It had waited for us to be ready to receive it, and finally, we were.